Assalamu alaikum. Hello
Alaikum.
everyone and welcome to our live stream webinar. I am Alaaddin Tekin and inshallah I will be the moderator of this webinar today. If I start to introducing myself, I am a PhD final year student in the Department of History and Civilization at International Islamic University, Malaysia, and I completed my thesis with the title of Ottoman-Sumatran Relations in the second half of the 19th century. Before starting the program, I would like to thank the Center for Ottoman and Malay World Studies, which were established by Fatih Sultan Mehmet Vakıf University in Istanbul, and International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization of IIUM in Kuala Lumpur for the organizing this webinar. This week's topic of the webinar speeches will be titled Islamic Civilization in Rome and the Malay World, Encounters and Interactions. Our two distinguished academician guests, who are really experts in their fields, will give detailed information about this subject today. Professor İsmail Hakkı Göksoy was connected from Sparta in Turkey, and Professor İmtiyaz Yusuf was connected to our live stream from Kuala Lumpur. I want to introduce our speakers before starting the program. Professor Dr. İsmail Hakkı Göksoy received his PhD degree from London University. He specializes in the history of Islam and the relations between the Turkey and the Malay world. Now he is a professor at Süleyman Demirel University in Sparta, Turkey. Welcome to our live stream on YouTube, dear professor. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. Fine, thanks. And you?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our other speaker is Associate Professor İmtiyaz Yusuf, completed his PhD at Temple University in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He specializes in religion with a focus on Islam in the Malay world and also Muslim-Buddhist dialogue. He is now an Associate Professor and Deputy Dean for Students Development and Community Engagement. And also he is the Coordinator Islam and Buddhism Program at ISTAC of IIUM. Welcome, dear Professor. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for inviting me and
Thank
to
you.
share my views with you and Dr. Ismail this morning on your side, this afternoon from Kuala Lumpur.
Thank you. I think, to be honest, perhaps the most beneficial part of this pandemic period is that we can listen to this kind of professor who are really experts in their fields on the same platform in a short time. And I would like to thank again both professors for participating to this program. I think almost 1 month ago, we discussed this topic in Turkish with Professor Göksoy, but today we want to examine this issue more detail with valuable comments and contributions from Professor İmtiyaz Yusuf in English. The main factor that motivated us to create a perception of Turkey in the academia of the Malay world, and likewise to establish a Malay world dam in the Turkish academy. We believe that these two geographies, which know little about each other, will get to know each other more closely with these and similar programs. The main purpose of this webinar is to examine the Islamization and its civilization on the Malay world and Turkey, and then we would like to discuss the diplomatic relations between the Ottoman Caliphate and the Sultanates of the Malay world. In this context, the impact of the pan-Islamism policy developed by Ottoman Empire in the 19th century is an important development in these relations, involving examination of the factors of Hadramis, Ottoman consuls, the pan-Islamist press, Malay Hajis, and Khutbas. In this framework, we divided the topic into 2 parts, and in the first chapter of the webinar, we would like to discuss and talk and examine the Islamization of the Malay world and Turkey. Then later we will talk about the Islamic civilization in these regions. In the second part of the webinar, we will talk about the relations between the two civilizations. We will try to identify the factors underlying the relationship of two geographies that are so distant from each other, and probably these two civilizations are the most Western and the most Eastern of the Islamic world, which could establish a diplomatic relation. After this brief introduction, I would like to turn my dear professors and ask some questions about the topic. And I want to start to ask with the meaning of the words Malay world and room used by the editor in the title selection of this webinar. Because I think this can create some confusion, although we will frequently use the term Malay world in this webinar. For example, the relations between the Ottoman Caliphate and the Malay world in generally have been realized with the island of Sumatra and Java of Indonesia, but we are still using the Malay world. And I am asking my first question to Professor Imtiaz Yusuf. Dear Professor, what does the Malay world mean? What should we understand from this term, and what geography does it cover?
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you to the Ottoman-Malay World Center and to Alauddin and Dr. Ismail for coming, for inviting me this afternoon to discuss this very important topic. Let me begin by saying this, that what is connecting the Malay world and the Room or the Ottoman world is the Bridge of Islam. And it is very less known by the people that when Islam was arising in Mecca in the 7th century, Buddhism was establishing itself here in Southeast Asia. So there were two parallel developments taking place. The rise of Islam in Arabia from 7th century and the rise of Buddhism in Southeast Asia. And if you go forward after that, so when we come to the 12th century, we find that Islam gets established here in Southeast Asia, or what is known as Serambi Makkah. Serambi Makkah in the Malay world means the veranda of Mecca. And it is also known as Nusantara. And these days they're talking about Nusantara Islam. So when you go furthermore in history, you find that in the 15th century, when the Ottoman Empire is established in Turkey, Islam is being established here in Malacca in the 15th century. That these are the two parallel lines which are bridging the Malay world with the Ottoman world or the Room world you just mentioned about. And it is very interesting factor again that Southeast Asia today is the center of Buddhism, while Turkey or the Ottoman history is the center of Islam. So after Buddhism died in India, it came and established itself here in Southeast Asia. And today, Islam and Buddhism are the two main religions of Southeast Asia. 42% of Southeast Asia or Nusantara is Muslim, and 40% of Southeast Asia is Buddhist, and they live parallelly. And this I compare with the situation in the Ottoman world, where also there was a presence of Islam and Christianity and Judaism. So in my first comment here is that what bridges them is Islam, and second is the multiculturalism of both worlds, the Malay world and the Ottoman world. And then we find later on the relationships are further established. People mostly talk about when you read the Orientalist literature, they mostly talk about the defense demands from the Malay world to the Ottoman Sultanate. But there is more to this than what is presented in the Orientalist literature. Actually, you find that the Malay kings and the Malay Rajas recognize the Ottoman caliphs as a caliphate of that time. So this is the third bridge, which bridges the Malay world with the world of with the Ottoman. And today Indonesia is the largest Muslim country here in Southeast Asia, followed by Malaysia and Brunei, while the rest of the countries of Southeast Asia are Buddhist. So we have these two worlds which are bridged together by Islam, and second by parallel developments or the times of establishments. And the third is that the third part is that they are multicultural and they are inclusive civilizations. The Ottoman world is very much recognized for its inclusivism of the millet system. And when you look here at Southeast Asia, also it is the Muslim world of Southeast Asia or Nusantara is also very inclusive, where Muslims are living along with the Buddhists, with the Taoists, with the Confucianists, and the Asian religions. And that is what makes me very much interested, is the multiculturalism which is present in these two parts of the world. Let me share here with you some slides, which I have brought with me. I'm not able, just a minute. I cannot see. Cannot see the slide here.
Professor, also I want to ask the same question to Professor Göksoy, because also we use the title as a room. Professor Göksoy, what does the room mean? Who should come to our mind when using the room word, and how is this word used by Malays and Turks?
Yeah, I mean, the word room comes from the city in Italy, Rome, because in Eastern Europe and also in Western Europe, Romans, actually this word occurs in Arabic. So from Arabic, it went to Persian and later on to Turkish and also to Malay language. So in Malay, the room means, especially in the early places, when the Malay word became Muslims, it means the Ottoman Empire. For instance, in the Malay literature, it is usually called Raja Rum. I mean, referring to the Ottoman Caliph and Ottoman Sultan. So, I mean, in the Malay literature, this word is very well-known word. I mean, when they referring to Raja Rum or the land of the Rum, that means the center of the Islam, which is governed by the Ottoman Empire in the Middle Eastern area, Turkey, Anatolia, and Arabian Peninsula, and North Africa. But the words always takes new meanings from time to time, from generation to generation, from language to another language. So, I mean, the origin of the word is, of course, come from the city of Rome in Italy, but later on in the Muslim history literature, we have in the Quran, for instance, Surah Rum. That means at that time Byzantine Empire. But later on, I mean, in the Eastern languages, when we refer to the word Rum, that means the Ottoman Empire, Raja Rum. So, I mean, Rum means in the Malay literature, the Ottoman ecumenic area, we can say.
Thank you so much. Professor Imtiaz, you was sharing a slide, I think, and while sharing this slide, and can you talk about also what did the local people in living these islands believe before the Islamization of the region?
Okay. When you look at this this slide, which I'm showing to you now, you you can see that it is a mosque, it is a 400-year-old mosque in southern Thailand. And this mosque, and also this is the second mosque, which is also from Indonesia. So before the coming of Islam, the past of this part of this world was animist and Hindu and Buddhist, as we see different pictures. Like this is and Islam came here also from China. So we find in the architecture that there is the presence of Islam and the past of Hindu Buddhist culture, which was synchronized or syncretized type of culture which existed here in Southeast Asia. And this is a very interesting photo of a mosque in Indonesia, in Kudus, where you see a Hindu temple and a mosque existing next to each other. So what I'm trying to say here is that Islam in Southeast Asia, with its background of animism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, was syncretic in the beginning, or was syncretic in the beginning, and slowly and gradually it adopted or it made its own trademark of what is known as Malay Islam, the Islam of the Malay world, where the Malay language becomes Islamized, the Malay adat becomes, or customs become Islamized, the Malay way of life becomes Islamized. And at the same time, the Malay people start looking towards Mecca and beyond Mecca to Egypt and to Turkey as the civilizational histories of Southeast Asia, links of Southeast Asian Malay world with the Islamic world in general. And you see the shared cuisine, and also at one time you see the adoption of the dress, the face cap, the red cap, which is mostly very popular from the Ottoman world.
Thank you so much, Professor Imtiaz. You talk about Islam came from China. What about the impact of India, especially? I wonder that because there were many Sufis come from India peninsula to especially for Sumatra at the port of Aceh. Was there any impact of Sufism from India or Middle East or Yemen?
Oh yes, there is. There's a link with India, with China and also India, because there was already a sea route trade going on from China to the Middle East so we find the coming of the traders and the Sufis, Sufi and traders at the same time, who came here and settled down, and they brought Islam with them. And the version of Islam which emerges here for the first time is very Sufistic. And we talk about the Wali Songo in the case of Indonesia, the 10 saints of Indonesia who are of Chinese background. And also we talk about the traders, and also we talk about Sheikh Ar-Raniri from India. And these two influences are coming and combining together with the Malay world. So even today, when you go around in Malaysia, right here in the city of Kuala Lumpur, when you look at the cuisine, and when you look at the dress, and when you look at the culture, and you look at the fashion, you find the intermingling of the Chinese, the Muslim, the Hindu, and the Buddhist cultures.
Thank you so much for giving this clear
Even
answer.
in language.
Yeah. And can you talk about, because I wonder that really, when exactly did the Malay world begin to Islamization, and how long this process take?
The Islamization begins with the period of around 11th century, especially with the kingdom of Malacca. When the kingdom of Malacca was established in 1400, it is the first time that Islam gets established or gets a strong foothold when here in the Malay world. And Malacca, after Malacca, Sumatra and Singapore and Aceh and the rest. From there, Islam spreads out into Malaysian Peninsula, and from there it proceeds to southern part of Thailand, which is also known as the Malay part of Thailand, or Siam, Kelantan, Terengganu area, and this is how it's. So you find the presence of the Malay kingdoms in all of this Nusantara region, the whole what we today describe as Indonesia, and what we describe as Malaysia, and also southern Thailand.
Thank you so much, dear Professor. And perhaps it is one of the rare geographies where Islam did not separate as a result of a battle. And today we are talking about a region with the largest Muslim population. Professor Imtiaz Yusuf, as a result of this understanding of Islam in the region, how did the new sultanates established in the archipelago have relations with other Islamic states, for example, in the Middle East?
Well, they had the relationship already. They had the relationship already with the Hajj. The Hajj, it becomes the first instrument of having relationship with the Middle East. When people, you can imagine at that time, traveling for months over the sea, by sea, to reach Mecca and to reach Cairo or Egypt, and also to reach as traders to the Ottoman world. And that's how the relationship begins, and it continues, and it transforms. Also, there is the part of relationship with Iran, because Persia also has an influence here in Southeast Asia. So historically, we find that generally the relationship is constant, but the format of this relationship, the way this relationship between the Malay world and the Rum world goes on, takes different forms or transforms because of the change of economy and trade, and also technology and transport, and the means of transport.
Oh, thank you so much. And also, I wonder that also you talked that Malacca, for example, was one of the first place came to Islam around 11th and 12th centuries. But when you go to 16th century, beginning of the 16th century, there were some colonial forces in Malacca and in the Malay world. Was it impact separate of Islam in the archipelago, the colonial forces occupations?
Well, the intention, if you look at when you look at the historical, when you look at history, you find that before 16th century, the trade between China, the Malay world, and the Middle East is basically controlled by the Muslims, and the Europeans, the Portuguese, and the Dutch, and European and the British only later were searching of how to circumnavigate the Muslim world, or Eurasia, that part of trade, that part of region. So they were looking for the sea route to India and to Indonesia. That's why even the word Indonesia is an invented word. Actually, the name, there's no such thing called as Indonesia. It is a name which is given by the Westerners who were looking for sea route for trade for spices, and they came to Southeast Asia, and they call this part as Indonesia, or as what you call. But actually, if you go back past history, and you ask anybody living in the kingdoms or the empires of Malacca or Patani or Terengganu, and ask them, do you know of something called as Indonesia? It did not exist. The colonizers came here and basically uprooted or disrupted the whole region, and they established their centers which were not centers of power. For example, the Batavia in Indonesia, and Singapore here in relation to Malaysia. So these are the forces of disruption, and also forces of control, controlling political control and economic control over this region through colonization.
Professor, also you have many articles about Buddhism in the Malay world, and there were any conflict between Muslims and Buddhists or Hindus after local people converted to Islam in the region?
Historically speaking, we find no evidence in any of this in the past where there was war or conflict between the Buddhists and the Muslims and the Hindus. What we hear of the conflict of very recent, the Rohingya case, which has become the case which everyone talks about, is very, very recent. Actually, there is a lot of. I was teaching in Thailand before coming to teach here at ISTAC, and if you go to Thailand, and you will find a temple and a mosque next to each other. And in fact, even if you go to Indonesia, the largest Buddhist monument in the world, the Borobudur, is still preserved in the largest Muslim country. The Borobudur is present and is existing as a cultural heritage of the part of this world. So we don't hear of any conflict. Rather, we hear and we read about coexistence. I used to, since I work on Islam and Buddhism, I meet many Buddhist monks who are surprised to learn about the history of Islam and Buddhism, which goes very, very, very much time back when Muslim scholars like Al-Biruni, Ash-Shahrastani, they were studying Buddhism and they wrote about Hinduism, and they even included these two religions as within the category of what we call as Ahl al-Kitab. So Muslims were always inclusive, and we don't find any conflict going on or war taking place between Islam and Buddhism in Southeast Asia. What is happening is of a very recent, during this last decade, where tensions are arising between Muslims and Buddhists, and this is very latest development. It is rather based on the ignorance of the history and the ignorance of the intercultural understanding, interreligious understanding between Islam and Buddhism.
Thank you very much for this valuable information you shared with us. And I want to turn Professor Göksoy. Professor İsmail Hakkı Göksoy, how was the Islamization among the Turks? Was it different than the Malay world?
We can find some similarities between the Turks and the Malays concerning with the Islamization. But of course, there are some differences. I mean, Islamization is a process in every culture, in every society. So, I mean, the beginning of Islamization among the Turks started from the early 8th century when the Umayyad governors, especially the Khorasani governor Qutaybe bin Muslim, began to conquer the major cities in Mawara Nehir. We say, let's say, like Buhara, the city of Buhara, the city of Beykent, the city of Samarkand. So, I mean, from the early period of Umayyad periods, some Turkish groups come across with the introduction of Islam in the Khorasan region and the upper parts of the Khorasan region, especially Amudarya and Sirdarya area. But this Islamization has been completed I mean, in 3 or 4 centuries time. So especially the centuries of 9 and 10 centuries, we can see very, very strong, spread of Islam among the Turkish groups, especially when some Turkish rulers accepted Islam in Central Asia. For instance, the Karahanids and the Ghaznavis, and also in the Eastern Europe, let's say above the Hazar Sea, the Bulgarian Turks, when they accepted Islam in the early 10th centuries, so they spread Islam. So especially the Islamization of the Turks, I mean, very completely occurred during the Abbasid period. Of course, there was no any attack from outside during the Abbasid period, but because of the activities of traders and also activities of the some I mean Sufistic or mystical persons, some sheikhs. So all these contributed to the Islamization among the Turks. For instance, we have Yesevi, Ahmet Yesevi. For instance, his murids, I mean, especially help to spread Islam among the nomadic Turks in Central Asia and also in other places where the nomadic people lived in the countryside, especially. So, but when a Turkish ruler accepted Islam, through this Muslim Turkish ruler, Islam also spread among the non-Muslim Turks because of their Gaza activities. I mean, we can see this kind of activity. For instance, Satuk Burahan of Karahanid Sultanate. Because of his activities and after him Baytaş Han, Süleyman Han, all the Turkish groups living in the northern part of Central Asia accepted Islam. We have especially in 1040s in some historical notes saying that 10,000 tents, people of the 10,000 tents accepted Islam by sacrificing the qurbans, I mean the animals, by celebrating their Islamization process. So I mean it was a process started from the early 8th century but continued until the 12th century. So comparing with the Malay world, with the case occurred in the Turkish world, of course, there are some parallels. I mean, the situation or the process started in the Malay world a few centuries later on, but it continued from the 11th, 12th centuries until the 6th centuries in the Malay world. And we can find, I mean, the similar factors of traders and dervishes, and also some hojas, and also, for instance, in the Malay world, when a local Malay or Indonesian ruler accepted Islam, so he tried to spread Islam over the other territories. So, for instance, we can say about the case of Aceh. For instance, Aceh Sultanate, when it became very important Sultanate, he conquered Minangkabau area and also attached to all the smaller rajas, kings in the eastern part of Sumatra Island. And for instance, in Java, for instance, when Demak became a political Muslim unity, and it by conquering the other places, it became very important Sultanate. So the rest of the I mean the Java territories came under Demak Sultanate because of the Muslim I mean administration. The local people became more inclined to acceptance of Islam. Of course, there are in that situation the contribution of the Sufi mystic persons like Veli Songo in Java, for instance, especially 15th century and 16th centuries, these people, Sunans, let's say in the local language, they contributed the spread of Islam among the hinterland areas, in the rural areas as well. So, I mean, when we compare the Islamization process among the Turkish world, and also the Malay Indonesian world, we can find some similar factors, similarities, and some parallels as well. Islamization stories, for instance, are very similar stories when we look at them. For instance, when the case of Satuk Burahan, the Karahanid ruler, so he saw the prophet in his dream. I mean, the similar thing we can find the Pasai ruler before becoming Muslim. He saw also the Prophet Muhammad in his dream, and the Prophet Muhammad's instruction to become Muslim, to convert Muslim. So this kind of I mean parallels we can find also in Islamization stories, which we can find in the Malay world, and also which we can find in the Turkish world as well.
Thank you so much, Professor. And since our time is limited, I want to finish the first part here and continue with the second part quickly. On this information that especially Professor Imtiaz Yusuf shared with us, we see colonial forces in the region immediately after the Islamization of the region. As a result of this colonial movement, the Ottoman Empire, which was the most powerful Islamic state of the 16th century, and they did not remain silent on these occupations and accepted some envoys and ambassadors from the Malay world sultanates. For example, the Sultanate of Aceh, which established the first diplomatic relations from the Malay world with Istanbul in the middle of the 16th century, and they asked the Ottomans for help. Dear Professor Göksoy, the question is that what was the reason for the Acehnese to ask help from the Ottoman Empire? Because of it was the most powerful Islamic state of the period, or were there other reasons for the Acehnese to ask help from the Ottoman?
Well, of course, because when the Malacca fell under the Portuguese occupation in 1512, so in the area, as a major Muslim sultanate, Aceh emerged in the northern part of Sumatra Island. So although the continuation of Malacca Sultanate was carried out by the Johor Sultanate later on, but in the area, the Aceh, even after the fall of Pasai Sultanate under the Portuguese occupation, so Aceh became, from the beginning of the 16th century, as a important state polity. So because Portuguese, wanted to control all the trade activities, and also political wanted to limit the political activities of the Muslim sultanates. So since the Portuguese wanted to become the boss in the area, suppressing all the Muslim sultanates, so the Aceh Sultanate wanted to get help from outside. So since 1530s, the Acehnese sultanates, of course, tried to get some help from the India and from also Ottoman Empire on diplomatic ways, some seamen and some soldiers. But later on, because of the conflict between Aceh Sultanate and the Portuguese in the area, which continued for a long time. Aceh needed to get help from the big power of the Muslim world at that time, which was the Ottoman Empire. So probably, from the time of during the Kanuni Sultan Süleyman, so Aceh sent several missions to Istanbul. As far as we know, probably the first Achenese mission came in 1547 to Istanbul, but later on, again, 1562, another Achenese mission came to Istanbul to get military help, military technology, and to combat against the Portuguese forces. Of course, we know, from the Hikayat Aceh and the Malay books, Hikayats, literature, these Ottoman helps during the Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent, and later on his son Sultan Selim II, we say in Turkish Sarı Selim. These military help of the Ottoman Empire to Aceh Sultanate, helped the Achenese Sultanate to remain as a Muslim Sultanate for a longer period. So against the Portuguese domination in the Malay world at that time. So the Ottoman Empire technological sending of the military equipments to Aceh Sultanate, and also sending of the military experts to Aceh, how to make guns and how to make big cannons, and even how to make the ships. All these techniques which was known in the Ottoman Empire was also adopted by the Achenese citizens in Banda Aceh in northern Sumatra. So because of this Ottoman help, Aceh Sultanate continued to remain as an important Sultanate political force in the area against the Portuguese Empire.
Thank you so much. And I want to continue with, because the Portuguese occupied in some part of the Malay world, and we know that Portuguese was a common enemy between Ottoman and the Sultanate of Aceh. And Ottoman, as you said, sent some military experts to the region to teach them how to make cannons, how to make reliefs to fight against the Portuguese. But when we look at the Sultanate, or the Sultan of Aceh, Alauddin Riayat Shah al-Qahar's letter to send Ottoman Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent, they also requested to be a vassal state under the Ottoman Caliphate, right? And what was the replying to this requesting from Aceh Sultanate?
Well, in those times, of course, they established very strong alliance between the Achenese Sultanate and the Ottoman Empire. So, but this relationship was not the one which we can find in other places, which were directly under Ottoman Empire. But because of the long distance and not because there was no very geographical attachment between the Achenese Sultanate and Ottoman territories. So the Achenese Sultanate, because considered their existence with the help of the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman with the military help of Ottoman Sultanate. So that is why between two people, two sultanates, there occurred very strong sentiments among them. So Acehnese considered themselves as the vassal sultanate of the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman sultans were also the caliphs of the all Muslims. So this understanding, this acceptance of the local Muslims as the highest authority, as the caliph of all Muslims in the world. So throughout history, the Acehnese Muslims, as well as the other Muslims in the area, in Malaysia and also in Indonesia, their religious sentiments and their spiritual attachments to Ottoman Caliphate continued later on. And also there was very strong relations between the Ottoman held territories in Arabian Peninsula because of the Mecca and Medina cities, Haramain area, because of Hajj, and also because of the educational activities which most of the Malay Indonesian students took their higher religious education in Mecca and Medina in the Hijaz area. Maybe we can know some of them continued their education in Damascus, in Ottoman Damascus, and also in Jerusalem, and later period, especially in the 19th century, in the Ottoman Cairo in Egypt. So because of these connections, there always occurred very strong sentiments towards the Ottoman Caliph and Ottoman Sultans by the Malay and Indonesian Muslims. So that's why the local people in the 19th century, when another European colonial power, Dutch, began to attack Aceh Sultanate, so they again faced their faces towards the Ottoman Empire. So they considered, they declared that they were the vassals of the Ottoman Empire in the past. And the Ottoman sultans and caliphs, of course, established close relations and established close allies, or ittifaq relations with the other sultans above their own territories through helping technological and also other things. But in return, the Ottoman caliphs and sultans required from them the saying of the name of the caliphs in the khutbahs, and also in the Friday khutbahs, and also in another occasions. For instance, in the Hikayat Aceh, there is a story that the Acehnese Muslims were exempted from the tribute, paying tribute to the Ottoman Empire, instead of holding Mevlud festivals on the occasion of the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. So this understanding is continued among the Acehnese people very commonly. And so the Ottoman Empire did not require to get, tribute from other sultanates far away from their own territories. But some kind of relations, technical and material and spiritual bond ties, and the name of the mention of the caliph's name in the khutbahs, these are requirements. For instance, I remember one thing when we talk about the Fas Sultanate. At that time was Saadi Sultanate in Marrakesh. For instance, that Sultanate sent very few presents to the Istanbul, and the Ottoman Sultan said, well, in the hutbahs, in the Fars, the hutbahs are read on the name of the Ottoman caliphs, Ottoman sultans, but they sent very few presents. So these are, I mean, maybe spiritually considered some kind of vassal status. So, I mean, in the political sense, it was not very strong attachment vassalate state, but because of the caliphate power, which held by the Ottoman sultans, and the mentioning of the Ottoman caliphs' names in the hutbahs, and also presenting some gifts, sending some presents to the Ottoman center of, to Istanbul. So this kind of relations gave the impression among the Achenese people that, well, the Achenese or Aceh Sultanate was the vassal of the Ottoman Empire in the past. So they expressed these this kind of understandings in the 19th century as well. So maybe we can not talk about in the political term, in modern state system as a political term, not as a vassal state, but because of these connections, they considered themselves as the vassal of the Ottoman Empire.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. And Professor Imtiaz Yusuf, is there anything you would like to add about the relations between the Turks and the Malay world? As I can see the Ottoman Sultan's Tughra behind of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to say this and expand upon what Professor Ismail was already talking about, and that is the whole Muslim world in that period, in Africa, in India, and here in the Malay world, we're all looking towards Makkah as the religious city, as the religious center, but towards Turkey, towards the Ottoman, towards Istanbul as a political center, as a political center of the Muslim world. And this is where you find this relationship. And second thing, the other thing which you find is that there is a lot of the sharing of Muslim political culture is shared between the Muslim political culture of the Ottoman world and the Muslim political culture of the Malay world. So in terms of political cultures too, there is similarity. And as I said before, that the whole Muslim world, from Zanzibar to Morocco to Aceh to Mumbai or to Delhi, all were looking to the Ottoman Empire as a center, as the caliphate of the Muslim, the headship of the Muslims in that period. And all of them were facing, as Professor Ismail said, Portuguese as their enemy, arch enemy, first arch enemy. And second are the Dutch, and the third are the British. And we know that if you know the political history of the Muslim world, you see that the relationship, the central role which Ottoman Empire played at that time, before the colonial period, and also in the post-colonial period. And in the post-colonial period, if I come to the contemporary times, I would say that Turkey and Turkey as we know today, and the Malay world today here share same political culture, that is Islamic political culture. You may say, or the scholars should say, that Turkey is secular, but in my view, Turkey and Malay world share something, a commonality of semi-secular culture, where in spite of being secular in certain areas of life, religion plays a very important role in the daily life of the citizens of these two regions. And the third part, which is shared between the Malay world and the Turkish world, is that they are modern democracies. If you look at the whole Muslim world, of the 57 countries in the OIC, the Muslim democracies are existing here in Southeast Asia and in Turkey. So there are three or four kinds of similarities which go back into the past and even continue until today, here right now in 2020, where Southeast Asian Muslim countries are democracies, and as well as Turkey is a democracy. So this is a commonality which is shared between the Malay world and the Turkish world.
Thank you so much.
That's very good point. For instance, we cannot see any democratic process in the Arab world.
Yes.
So some of the states are ruled by the kings, and the others were mainly ruled by the military or personage. Persons. So based coming from the military base. So in the Muslim world, of course, only Turkey and also Malaysia, Indonesia are governed by the democratically elected leaders. Maybe after that we can add to in Indian Muslims like Pakistan and Bangladesh, although there are several military coups like in Turkey, in Pakistan as well. So when we compare the Muslim countries, the other Muslim countries, so Turkey and also Malaysia, Indonesia have more common democratic experiences, more similarities, today even.
Thank you. And I want to, because until now we generally talked about in the 16th century and before the 16th century, but I want to come to 19th century because in the second half of the 19th century, especially during the reign of Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the relations developed very much between Istanbul and the Malay world. With the policy of especially pan-Islamism, and especially Sultan Abdul Hamid used the title of Caliphate in the Malay world, in Sumatra, Java, and other parts of the Malay world. And dear Professor Göksu, could you summarize the relations developed in this period in general?
Of course, when we look at the history, especially the 19th century, the situation now in the Malay Indonesian world were mainly, planned by the Dutch colonial power and also British colonial power, because they envisaged the future of these islands. So the British came in the late 18th century to the Malay world, especially staying the areas like Singapore and also Penang Island. And later on, they penetrated into Malay Peninsula. So the Dutch, came in the late 16th century. From the beginning of the 17th century until 19th century, all the islands, including Java, Sumatra, Sulawesi, and the Borneo Islands, half of them, came under Dutch rule. The last area which was not under Dutch control was Aceh Sultanate in the northern part of Sumatra. So when all these two European powers came to the area and began to control all the political life, so some Muslim rulers, some Muslim sultanates, again look for the Ottoman Empire. Look for the Ottoman Caliph in Istanbul to get help. For instance, even in early 19th century, we know that the Sultan of Kedah in Malaysia today, in 1825, I think, they sent a mission to Istanbul to get help against the Siam kingdom, which Thailand today, because Thailand initially occupied the Patani Sultanate, and then later on in the northern Malay kingdoms like Kedah and also Terengganu and the other smaller Malay kingdoms. So the Sultan of Kedah again looked for help for the Ottoman Caliph in Istanbul, even in the early part of 19th century, by sending a mission to Istanbul. And even Kedah survived by giving the island of Penang, which was very in ruin in the past, not used, not called at by any ships, to the British. I mean that because of giving Penang to the British, and the British, because of the British help, I mean the Kedah survived later on, although it accepted some very slightly Thai sovereignty in the area. So in later period, for instance, we have the coming of the missions from Aceh, and also the missions coming from Riau Island, because Johor Sultanate was divided later on into two parts. One part dynastic rule continued in the Riau Island, and the main dynastic ruling continued in the Johor Island. And even in Jambi, when in East Sumatra, when the Dutch began to occupy, and the new Sultan, Jambi Sultan, Sultan Taha Seyfettin, I mean, refused to obey the Dutch, and tried to get help of the Ottoman Caliph by sending I mean missions to Istanbul in 1850s. So Aceh, we know from the start of 50s, sent several missions through Mecca, Medina, or directly. And even when the Aceh Dutch war began in Aceh in 1873, so they sent the foreign minister Abdurrahman Zahir to Istanbul to get diplomatic and military help from the Ottoman Empire at that time. But all these sultans, I mean, tried to get the help of the Ottoman Caliph, Ottoman Sultan, against the European colonial powers. They thought that, well, living under the European domination, it is better to be attached to Ottoman Empire, although their territories were far from the Ottoman territories. So because of the historical connection, spiritual connection to the Ottoman Empire, and because the Ottoman Sultan was seen as the Caliph of the all Muslims, and the Sultan Abdulhamid used this phenomenon during his rulership in late 19th century to get the support of the Muslim people in the areas, especially in Asia, in Africa, which were under the colonial powers, as a power strategy against the European dominations. So, I mean, all these local Muslim sultanates, rulers, some of them even, tried to get some kind of relations and some kind of support for their existence, continuity in the area. So, in the Ottoman archives, we have all these, I mean, archival documents of these relations and their sending of the letters. So even in recent time, so Ottoman and Southeast Asian documents were published in English, through a project which was supported by the British Academy and published by the Brill. I mean, we can see when we look at all these.
Thank you. At that point, I want to ask also the relations between the Ottomans and Johor Sultanates, because we know that the Sultan of Johor, if I am not wrong, the name of is Abu Bakr, visited Istanbul and met with Sultan Abdulhamid II. And once a time when I joined the speech given by Sayyid Naqib al-Attas, and he told us when the Johor Sultan come back to Johor, for example, he brings some city names from Turkey. For example, the port of Mersin in Turkey, he brings the name to Johor. There is a city in Mersin in Johor state. And also the name of Üsküdar, city of Istanbul, he brings the name to Skudai in Johor. And we know that also Abdulhamid gave some jariya to him. And we are talking about some jariyas, for example, Ruqayya and Hatice Hanım. What was these relations between Johor and Ottoman?
Yes, I mean, especially the relations between Malaysia and Ottoman, when we consider these relations, especially in the 19th century, so we can find a very good relationship established between the Ottoman caliphs and also Johor Sultanate. So at that time, Johor Sultan Abu Bakr, he was, traveled several times to European countries. So I think one of them was in 1884 or 5. But when we look at the Ottoman archives, actually in his first calling at Istanbul, we do not have any documentary evidence. But and later on, for instance, in 1893, during this Abdulhamid II, he came initially to Egypt, Cairo, and he met the Khedive of Egypt, who was attached to Ottoman Empire at that time. And also there was Ottoman commissaries, Muhtar Pasha there. So he wrote a letter to Ottoman foreign minister saying that the Johor Sultan Abu Bakr was going to leave Cairo tomorrow and will go to Istanbul in the last days of Ramadan. Even he will follow the Bayram Selamlı of the Caliph. Bayram Selamlı means, the Caliph during the first Muslim festival, through a procession, going from the palace to the mosque. So all the people in Istanbul, come together around the road where the Caliph and Sultan goes to mosque and coming from the mosque. So, and he says, for instance, he held the Ottoman medal. So from this information, we come to conclusion that Sultan Abu Bakr held, met the Ottoman Sultan before during his traveling to Europe, because he went to London and he went to Vienna and he went to Paris later on. Even the Ottoman ambassador in Vienna reported later on his thanking to the Ottoman Sultan, which Abu Bakr was welcomed very warmly in Istanbul. So probably in the first meeting of Abu Bakr with Sultan Abdulhamid, we couldn't find any documentary archival documents, but he was, because it was the first meeting, so he was later on, because of the meetings of the Ottoman with the Ottoman Sultans, he was appreciated very much by the Ottoman Caliph, and were given two Jariya, concubines, from the Ottoman palace. Their names are Rukiye and Hatice. So, but in later, and also medals. So in 1884 or 5, so these medals should be have given, because when he came to 1893, he had already on him wearing the Ottoman medal on him. And even he says to the Ottoman commissaries in Egypt, Gazi Muhtar Pasha, saying that, well, in the hutbahs, in the Friday hutbahs, before his name, the name of the Ottoman Caliph is mentioned in the hutbahs in Johor. And also similar thing occurs in other Malay kingdoms in the area. So all these understandings, these archival documents, we understand that between the Ottoman Caliph and Sultan Abdulhamid II and the Johor Sultanate, Johor Sultan Ebu Bekir, there were very good relationship, and this relationship was also, promoted by giving two girls from the Ottoman palace by Abdulhamid II. So, and later on, in the Malay oral transmissions, we have more information about these Ottoman Turkish concubines, jariyas. Of course, the concubine regulation passed in the Ottoman Empire in 1867, and slavery was forbidden. But in the palace, these girls were palace servants, something like that. I mean, we cannot consider as ordinary concubine, but they were the service people. Because they get education and they get all these, public relations, social relations. So they can have even some of them very good musicians and very good, poets. Some of them, for instance, they were educated in the palace. So these Rukiye Hanım and Hatice Hanım played very important role in the Johor Sultanate later on. So Ebu Bekir married with the Hatice, and the Rukiye Hanım was given marriage to his brother. But later on, we know that Rukiye Hanım got married again at Attas family later on, married with a few more husbands, because the Ebu Bekir, after their husbands. So, even the first founder of the UMNO and also the first prime minister of Malaysia come from the Rukiye Hanım's descendants, you see. So in academic field, in the also in economic field, from this family, they were educated or brought an important persons later on, which led the country's important positions. We know that. So there was very good relationship, we know, between the Ottoman Sultan Abdulhamid II and also Johor Sultanate.
Okay. Thank you so much, dear professors. And now we understand that Ottoman even was established, firstly, established relation with the Sultanate of Aceh, but in the 19th century, we can see other parts of place and sultanates in the Malay world. Ottoman established some relations, for example, with the Sultanate of Jambi, Riau, Johor, in Penang, Kedah, and Singapore, and many parts of this area, we can see the relations between the Ottomans and the Malay wars. And I think it's a very productive program for myself and for the audience. And I would like to thank both my teachers for the clear answers you provided us. As a result of this valuable information given by both professors, I think that the valuable audience have knowledge about the subject now. But since our time is limited, I want to obey the time, and I want to move on to the question and answer section. And there are some questions, and I want to ask one question to Professor Imtiaz Yusuf. Dear Professor, one of the audience asked that, what was the reaction of the non-Muslim Buddhists, especially Buddhists in particular, in the face of the invasion of the colonial powers?
Well, in the Buddhist countries, when you look at the Buddhist countries, most of the Buddhist countries were colonized by either the French or the British, except Thailand. So there was a resistance movement in the Buddhist countries against the presence of French in Vietnam and Laos and in Cambodia, and also and against the British in Myanmar. So they were not very welcoming. There was a rise of Buddhist nationalism in the Buddhist countries, which was against the presence of Dutch people, against the colonizers who had colonized these countries. So there was similarities between the Muslim countries and the Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia against the colonial forces. I have seen one question which has come up here, a statement which I made recently, which I just made here, and the statement was that of semi-secular. Actually, if you go to Bangkok, as far as Bangkok, you would see that even the Thugra of the Sultan is, which is right here behind me, is also present in the mosques in Bangkok. So you see the Buddhist countries of Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, there was anti-colonial resistance, anti-French resistance, and in Myanmar it was anti-British resistance. So it was not different from the Muslim resistance towards colonialism. I use the word semi-secular, so somebody has asked a question, is it not an antithesis? But what I would like to say, well, the meaning of the word semi-secular, I mean that for all the Buddhist countries and the Muslim countries of the Southeast Asia, their religion, either Buddhism or Islam, is the official religion of these countries. And secularism is marginal, and it is, I find it existing only in the area of administration or bureaucracy, but largely the political culture, the political philosophy, the political ideology of the Malay countries, of the Malay world countries, and also the Buddhist world countries of Southeast Asia are either based in the Buddhist political culture or the Muslim political culture. And both of these set of these countries, the Buddhists as well as Muslims, were anti-colonial. For example, the British played a very cruel role in Myanmar, and they until today. So when Myanmar became, or Burma became independent, and until today they did not join the Commonwealth. So there is an anti-British attitude present in all these, or anti-French attitude present in these Buddhist countries, which we find similar presence in the Muslim countries. So what I'm trying to say is that the Muslim countries and the Buddhist countries have a shared political experience of colonialism and the cruelty and the subjugation and the exploitation of by the colonizers of this in this part of the world.
Thank you, dear professor. And also, second question goes to you again. What do you think of the rising Islamophobia in Southeast Asia? Does he think a similar thing can be observed in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, when you ask this question about rising Islamophobia, I've written about Asian Islamophobia. I call it Asian Islamophobia or Islamophobia which is coming in the Asian countries from the back door. And the responsibility for this lies with us, the Muslims, that we have not engaged with our neighbors. We have not engaged with our neighbors who are either Buddhists or Taoists or Confucianists, and rather we have engaged a lot of our time with Christians and Jews and not looking at our neighbors. And that's why I've been teaching in Thailand for 30 years, and I've taught many in Buddhist universities, and my students who were Buddhist monks, I always found that they did not understand Islam, or they identified in Islam similarity with Christianity. And because we Muslims have not, we take it for granted that we coexist with them, but we have not understood them or explained Islam to them in the way that they can understand Islam through Buddhist eyes, and neither have we engaged in dialogue with the Buddhists. So Asia is facing the rise of Asian Islamophobia, which is dangerous. And I think it is time that institutions like yours and also my institution here, ISTEC, that we engage in Muslim-Buddhist dialogue or Muslim-Confucianist dialogue, which is very much needed now.
Thank you. Professor Göksoy, there is one question for you. Why the relationship could not continue in the 17th and 18th centuries, or even until the second half of the 19th century? A diplomatic relationship has not been established almost nearly 300 years. What do you think are the main reasons behind this rupture of the relations?
Well, maybe there wasn't any need to continue diplomatic relations, but we speak of the documentary information. I mean, beyond this, we cannot say that there wasn't any diplomatic relation. Maybe there might have been, but we do not have any proof of this. So, but cultural relations continued between the Ottoman territories and the Malay-Indonesian world for centuries. So, I mean, Malay-Indonesian students came to Arabian Peninsula, to the Hijaz region. Even some of them might have come to Ottoman Damascus and Ottoman Istanbul and the Ottoman Cairo, Egypt. So maybe through the Ottoman officials, especially in the Hijaz region, Ottoman governor of Hijaz and the Ottoman governor of Yemen, because in late 19th century, when the Chinese missions came to Istanbul in, for instance, 1849, so the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman cabinet referred the case to the Yemen governor. So advised the Chinese mission to continue their relations with the Yemen governor. So, I mean, because Yemen was the nearest place in the Ottoman Empire for the Chinese and the Indonesian commerce missions. So we don't know, probably the relations continued with these Ottoman local governors. For instance, we have another evidence in the Hikayat Aceh, especially Iskender Sani period in the 1640s, saying that I mean, two ships came from Yemen to Aceh, and Yemen Pasha governors sent I mean, the persons to find very medical plans to cure the illness of the Ottoman Sultan in Istanbul. So probably through the Ottoman governors, authorities, I mean, these kind of relations continued later on. And when we look at the letter of Kedah Sultan in 1825, sent to to Istanbul, Ottoman government, in the letter it says that, well, the governor of Egypt, Muhammad Ali Pasha, yani we say Mehmed Ali Pasha, Mehmed Ali Pasha's ship comes to Kedah every year. So probably, I mean, the relations continue through the Ottoman provinces or the governors of the provinces to the region. Although very in important cases, in important high-profile situations, I mean, the relations with the center was established. Like in this, I mean, in the second part of the 19th century, as we know from the archival documents. So, I mean, in conclusion, we cannot say that there wasn't any, I mean, relationship between the Malay sultans and the Ottoman Empire in the 17th and 18th centuries. But I mean, there might have the relations continue throughout the authorities of the Ottoman provinces, especially Hijaz region. For instance, the Mecca Sharif issued some titles of Sultan to the Malay, I mean, missions. We can know that the Sultan of Bantam and the Sultan of Demak in Java received their sultanate titles by sending their missions to the Mecca, Hijaz, from the Ottoman Meccan Sharif family leader. So, I mean, the relations continued probably throughout the Ottoman authorities in the provinces. We can conclude in that way as well.
Thank you so much. Thus, we have come to the end of the time given to us. And almost we already spent our 1.5 hours. And would you like to add any your last words before the end of the program?
Me?
Professor Imtiaz, firstly, and after you.
Well, thank you very much for this. Is a very interesting and a very informative program, which we all participated together, and we learn about each other, and we relearn our history, and it also gave an opportunity to see how changes have taken place and how the Ottoman world and the Malay world shared many things in commonality, whether it is in culture, in politics, in trade relations, and also in the world, in international relations. So this is which we have learned today. And we have also learned that the Ottoman world and the Malay world are two examples in two ways, that both of them are multicultural. And on one side, both are inclusive cultures. And the second part, second side, or the last part of the commonality between the Malay world and the Turkish world is that they are democratic, and they have a long experience in democracy, which is of benefit for the whole Ummah, and the whole Ummah or the Muslim countries can learn from the democratic experiences and the developments, technological development, scientific development, educational development of Turkey and the Malay world. So this is my compliments or my last comment here.
Thank you. What about your last comments, Professor Göksoy?
Yeah, I would like to thank you first of all, and also the Ottoman-Malay Center in Istanbul, which is part of the Fatih Sultan Mehmet Vakıf University. I mean, we had a webinar program with you before, but it was in Turkish. So some of our students who do not know Turkish wanted to get the information also in English. So I think it became very good occasion for them to get to listen to us. And also I would like to thank also for Professor Imtiaz Yusuf. Of course, I know his name from his articles, but I didn't see him in person like here. It was very good occasion for me to have a talk with him. Also with Istak, which I visited the center, I think 3 years ago, when I was taking for a visit to Kuala Lumpur, to Malaysia. So we have talked about the most general subjects, and also within these general subjects, some important conclusions we expressed, and some important parallels, some important understandings. I hope we provided good information for our listeners. I hope they enjoyed this forum. So for other occasions, we can go into much detailed subjects. So thanks for all of you and holding this meeting, and also thanks to our listeners. Thank you very much.
I am also thankful to you, and I was proud.
Terima kasih banyak.
And I was proud to be a moderator in this webinar attended by two honorable professors. I would especially like to, my last thank to Mr. Serdar Çöp, the Secretary of the Center for Ottoman and Malay World Studies at Fatih Sultan Mehmet Vakıf University, who contributed to realization of this webinar. I am sorry if I had a mistake during the webinar. Hope to see you again and have a nice day.